What's up? What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, and of course, follow the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. What an awesome show for you guys today. I really enjoyed this conversation, learn a lot every time I come across today's guest. Today's guest is going to be David Brickley. He is the founder and CEO of STN Digital. If you don't know STN Digital, you've probably seen or come across a lot of their work. They work with some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment on social, on content strategy, on campaigns, on branded content. They just do phenomenal work, and we're going to learn a lot from David today. So stick around for that conversation. But first, this episode's helpful tool. And this episode's helpful tool is an easy meme generator. It's a meme generator from ImageFlip, imgflip.com/meme generator. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's a super easy, quick tool. Works on both mobile and desktop. It's a browser tool and lets you create quick memes on the fly. It has a stock of some of the most popular memes that you see out there and lets you quickly add text as you see fit and generate yourself a quick meme that you can use on social. Now, of course, there's plenty of conversation to have in the greater sports and entertainment space about overusing memes or relying on memes too much, but they have a place. Fans seem to enjoy them, especially when they're well-timed. Just you don't want to overdo it. And of course, try to make it authentic to your brand. Make sure you're not just using a tired meme just to use a meme. Try to do it within the personality, voice, and of course, integrating your brand directly. So that's this was helpful tool. Check it out. Start creating some more memes today for yourself or for the brand. Never a bad time. Well, there can be a bad time, but memes can be fun. So check it out. It's from ImageFlip, imgflip.com/meme generator. But more importantly, stick around because a phenomenal conversation coming up with David Brickley of STN Digital. Back on the podcast, and I am so psyched for today's guest, someone I've been following and admiring for a while, and it continues to grow his business. We're joined on the podcast today by David Brickley. He is the CEO and founder of STN Digital. Welcome to the podcast today, David.
Neil, what's going on, man? As we record this, the Lakers are about to get started for their 18th world title. So looking forward to that as we march forward in the NBA playoffs. Let's do it.
I like the confidence with the Lakers. I'm a Grizzlies fan, so I'm hoping that we knock you guys out in some one of these permutations.
Yeah, we shall see.
Should be fun, though, with the first playing turn. But we're going to geek out on social and sports today. My favorite topic to discuss, as everyone knows. That's why I have this podcast. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, David, we want to hear about you. Tell us about your career path, how you worked your way up in this crazy industry and making the move to start STN and growing it, and any tips for folks that want to work in sports and social.
Yeah, so we got our start back in 2013, April of 2013. So it's been a little over 8 years now. And basically how it started was – well, I'll kind of take you back. So I graduated at San Diego State with a degree in journalism. I wanted to become a broadcast journalist. So think Max Kellerman or Scott Van Pelt. I have the haircut for it. But that was my original goal, is to be on SportsCenter, play-by-play. So I did some play-by-play with the athletic department at San Diego State. I hosted my own radio show. I had a bunch of podcasts back then as well, talking Lakers, talking Chargers, things like that at SDSU. So after college, I actually ended up working at Fox Sports Radio as a producer for 3.5 years. In my opinion, I wasn't getting the David Brickley radio show quick enough. So what I ended up doing was I hosted my own show. I started a YouTube channel back in 2011, and I would use the Fox Sports Radio facilities overnight, the multi-million-dollar facilities, as my set on YouTube. So this show that I wanted to host on the radio, I just kind of took destiny in my own hands and hosted it on YouTube back then. That picked up quite a following even back then. There wasn't a lot of original sports content on YouTube. We got on the front page quite a bit. We got some good subscribers. And then I had an idea. I wanted to pitch Kobe Bryant himself an idea, which is called the Kobe Minute, a 1-minute video every week about his on-the-court and off-the-court successes. I pitched it to Kobe and his team, and he said, let's do it. So back then in 2012, I was making videos for Kobe across his social and website. Those videos would get like 300, 400,000 views because the algorithm back then was so friendly. And that was the epiphany, man. I mean, I grew up a diehard Laker fan, diehard Kobe fan. And when I kind of signed that big client, if you will, as a first client, I was like, wait a second, I can actually do this with other athletes, other teams, other brands. And that started STN Digital. I wasn't really originally trying to start a business or an agency, but once I saw that I can put my destiny in my own hands and start something and have it come to fruition, I was kind of hooked from there.
Man, that is so cool. I did
Yeah.
not. I haven't heard that story before from you. That's
Yeah.
wow. I can't imagine. And you look back too. If you were doing what you did back then, nowadays, would you be an individual creator and just be doing your own thing? Like, and how do you look at that? What you were doing then, kind of ahead of your time, versus what someone would be doing now, and just basically monetizing themselves, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to go the more traditional route, which is, have my own radio show or be on Sports Center or be a play-by-play broadcaster. But, the frustration of not getting it the traditional way was such a blessing in disguise because it made me go the more new age route, which is start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, all those different things. And it led me to where I am today. So if it wasn't agency, I probably would have continued to create original content. If I would have started my YouTube channel back in 2011 and kept up consistent content all the way to 2021, you can make an argument that it may have been one of the most successful sports channels on YouTube because it would have just been the first of many to start, but would have had a pretty good following and probably would have made some decent money. So maybe I would be a vlogger of sorts, making some decent money. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you were doing the thing before everyone wanted to be a creator.
Yeah.
Super
Yep.
cool to look back and think about. So at the time, and I mean, it's certainly not the case now, video was a little more difficult to produce.
Yep.
We didn't have these sophisticated HD cameras in our pocket that had you didn't have the Lightroom app and the Spark app and all these easy ways to edit. So how has the service that you provided and the value you provided to clients kind of changed over time from just we need a product versus now we need something that's going to blow people away?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, back then in 2013, it was right after Bleacher Report was acquired by Turner for $180 million. Back then, all Bleacher Report was, as you remember, was the team fan blog site. So top 10 Kobe dunks of all time, top 10 buzzer beaters in LeBron James' career. That was the content. And I think our idea back in 2013 was Bleacher Report is killing the Lakers with their Lakers fan blog, talking about the stuff fans want to see. If you go to Lakers.com, a bunch of boring press releases, a bunch of boring content that no fans wanted to engage with. So our original concept, our original business idea was let us come into your organization and create this fan content that people actually want to see. You'll get more clicks, more viewers, and you can monetize your web content because you're actually creating really fun, engaging pieces. Pretty quickly, the industry said, we're good on that, but can you help us with social media? And we're like, sure. So that was really the issue back then was they didn't have the resources. They didn't have the wherewithal. They didn't really understand social media. Back then, every major sports team had Facebook, had Twitter, had a YouTube, but there was no consistent posting strategy back in 2013. So they really wanted us to come in and be able to like be creative, create content, even something as simple as a graphic or an infographic that was so beyond what they can potentially do internally. That's what ended up being the business model that ended up being successful early on.
How do they look at, or how did you even position social as fitting into the overall strategy? Was it that this is going to be a traffic source for your app and your site, and that's ultimately what's going to pay the dollars, or like, where were we at in terms of analytics and ROI at that point?
Nowhere. I mean, I think they knew that they had to take a Twitter or Facebook seriously because they saw other brands taking it seriously and actually putting content out and seeing their followers go through the roof. They understood the ROI of having a larger audience on digital and on social. They just didn't know how to do it or didn't have the resources to consistently post content. So, that was back then. I mean, back then, I think we were pitching $500 monthly packages. So it didn't really break the bank. And it was probably the best deal in town if you look back at
Yeah.
what we provided for that because we were young, hungry, and kind of cutting edge on what we were doing. But yeah, they understood that they had to definitely have a consistent posting strategy. They just didn't know how to do so.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of want to pick your brain on just the fact that you were kind of in this role of being an expert before there really were experts in the space, and
Yep.
for you to be able to go and help Bleacher, as an example, craft their strategy, which now they are so well known for having a personality, having a different point of view. Like, how did you go about sort of, and even today, how do you go about learning what's going to resonate, what's going to work, and ultimately conveying through the social content that you guys produce, conveying what the brand wants to convey?
Yeah, I think being a practitioner of your craft, I think back then, although we didn't work directly with Bleacher, we saw what Bleacher was doing. And I was help running a Lakers fan blog at the time, creating, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 blogs a day just based on Lakers news, information, trade rumors, all those things that fans just kind of geek out over and want to talk about. And I think just being able to do that, back then we were live tweeting Laker games as well on this Laker fan site and understanding how the community was working. So we were kind of doing these analysis or these A/B tests, if you will, just for fun, just because we were younger and we kind of understood the power of a Twitter, the power of blogging and things like that. So, we were able to just get a lot of those reps underneath ourselves before starting the company and before even multi-billion-dollar professional sports teams had any idea the power of what that can do if you actually speak to the fan directly and see what they want to see. So, it was just I think trial by error and just, trying a bunch of different things, much like we all do to this day. And I think when you're in it every single day and you're understanding the feedback, much like an influencer circa 2021, they know their audience better than anybody in the world because they're constantly trying different tweaks, trying to beat the algorithm, trying to post on different times. What are the difference from albums versus in feed posts? It's just a constant science, if you will, when it comes to engaging an audience.
Yeah. I want to dive a little deeper into that too, because I think you can learn a lot from just day-to-day posting, and there are so many quote unquote hacks to make sure you do well in the algorithm, do well in the system. And you guys at STN are doing the day-to-day, but also doing a lot of the bigger picture thinking of this is the package, the franchise that we're going to put out there. So when you're going about trying to create something that's going to be effective, and the word effective can of course have a lot of meanings in some sense, are you looking at how do you marry those two things together? Like looking at this strategy overall works on this platform versus this hack will get you more likes. So having that sort of human behavior element to it, the platform strategy to it versus the ultimate numbers.
I think one thing that we end up doing, because again, what we do is we sell time. A lot of these clients don't have the time to sit there and whiteboard out a 3.5-hour idea, or they're a television network that has 17 different shows they're releasing this fall, and they don't have the time to put the TLC that's needed for maybe one of those 17 shows. So they hire STN to kind of like treat it with love, if you will. And I think that's the big thing that we help do is like, what's our core purpose? What's our mission? What's our North Star? What are our brand pillars? What audience are we trying to attract? Where do they live? All those things kind of sometimes I think get left behind, and people just start posting content. All right, let's grow to 1 million followers. Like, wait a second. Do you want 1 million followers that are more in the Gen Z demographic? Do you want 1 million followers that are more 35 to 54? That's an important distinction to make before you just start creating content, because you want to attract the right viewers that ultimately, from an ROI perspective, can purchase your product or tune into your television network or what have you. So, really sitting down before we start any client, understanding what are our goals, and then every month, every week, we talk to them, we're tracking against those goals, are so important. And I think just it takes a lot of time to sit there and do that. And a lot of brands get that wrong because they don't know where they're going. So how do you know if you're successful or not?
Yeah, this is awesome. This is hitting on some of my hot buttons myself too. A little bit of, and looking even recently. I mean, heck, you had the topic of engagement humping. I know you discussed it on an episode of your own podcast as well. And how, yes, if you may look at, I'm not going to name any names, but an example of an account that is engagement humping, their numbers are going to look like they're through the roof. But if you then look at, asking their TikTok followers, for example, or what is this brand all about? You know what they do, and if it's not cohesive, or I guess what I'm getting at is like, are these social media directors, managers, even at the lower level, being graded in the right way when they're presenting to their boss at the end of the quarter? These were our numbers, and they don't necessarily have the full context of this is how we got to those numbers. Like, is there something missing there, and how do you guys kind of help fill in those gaps when you guys are looking back on a campaign for a client?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to followers, that's a vanity metric. And I was talking to a woman named Tanya that works for Cerebly actually on my podcast. And she made a great point that at the CMO level, they only care about vanity, or that's kind of usually what they're looking at. But as we all know, we much rather have a lower amount of followers, but a much more highly engaged audience. But talking about engagement rate isn't as sexy as saying we have 1 million followers or we grew 100,000 followers this year, whatever it may be. So, I totally agree. I think, if you're just trying to get numbers, then yeah, maybe you're just posting memes all day and you're resharing UGC and that's getting likes and retweets. But like you said, if it's not getting tied back to an overall brand message or it's not getting tied back to an overall call to action, then who are you, right? Because there's so many other people, whether it's fans or brands, doing that same thing. So, when you go to House of Highlights, you're probably going to get the best sports highlights across the nation, across the globe in one succinct place. If you go to Barstool, probably going to make you laugh, probably going to entertain, and probably have some hot sports takes. When you go into those areas, same way. If you look back at linear, if I go to Comedy Central, I'm probably going to see stand-up or a cartoon or South Park, something to make me laugh. If I go to MTV, probably going to hear some music or some music videos or Real World or Jersey Shore. But it's important, I think, to understand when people are entering your space, what can they expect, and have it not just be completely random, because that's what people engagement companies all about.
Yeah, totally. Really well articulated. I'm glad we went down that path a little bit, because it's tough. And when you guys are doing these bigger brand campaigns, what does that look like? Not from soup to nuts, but at the end of the day, is there something beyond the basic metrics that we all think about, engagement metrics? Like, how do you put together that this is, whether it's sentiment or the way that we're portraying your brand, or the engagement metrics around the relevant content that is getting the brand messaging out there? Is there more contextual way to gauge success, I guess?
Yeah, it's really not one size fits all. I mean, obviously, I think any brand's going to want to look at, follower growth, new fans added, like as a net score, your engagement rate, your share, your comments, things like that, that really show that someone has taken action on your content. Especially, I love the save feature on Instagram. I think if someone saves your content, that's the best possible way to show that obviously your content resonated with that person. But, we have some clients that really want to increase their Gen Z demographic. They really want to increase Latinx or their Black audience. So those are the things we're looking at. Is our Gen Z audience that's maybe only 17% this month, can we get it up to 18% next month? So we may lose followers net, but if we lost, no offense, the 54 to 65-year-old demo, and we gained a bunch of 18 and 22-year-olds, that's actually a win, even though net score looks like we lost followers this month. So we work with a lot of brands that are trying to re-identify themselves, or they have a new initiative from the top down saying we need to get younger, or we need to get more diverse as a audience or as a consumer. And those are things we look at rather than maybe your traditional vanity metric, which is followers.
Love that. How does it look then when you're like activating across platforms as well, whether it's connecting linear, print, out of home, and certainly across even the social platforms, each individual one where you may have a different audience? Like, is there some of that sort of wiggle room as long as we're still staying true to our North Star, or does it need to be very uniform, or does it need to be very different?
So yeah, every platform needs to be just very authentic, right? I think it's so important to be genuine per platform. What works on Instagram, or especially like a Facebook or Twitter, is not going to work on TikTok, as we all know. They're different platforms that the audience is expecting a different type of content on those platforms. So the old analogy I always talk about is it would never make sense to put a radio commercial on television, because you would totally be negating the visual narrator that is television. You just have a black screen with a bunch of audio waveforms coming across, and that wouldn't be smart to do that, even though that might be a great radio commercial. And the same thing goes with social. But I do think, to your earlier point, you need to have a North Star for the entire campaign that's all laddering back to something. So if you're trying to promote a new movie, I think movie trailers or TV trailers, they usually tank on social media. They just don't do well, unless it's maybe like a Colin Kaepernick Nike ad or something like that. That's really like revolutionary and can cause a lot of excitement. But your traditional 16:9, 30-second commercial is going to tank on Instagram. However, if you're selling a movie, what are you going to post there? Maybe it's a 4x5, maybe it's 15 seconds, maybe it's an influencer campaign that's talking about how excited they are about the movie. So it's really about, finding these different platforms. What are the best ways you can utilize them? And then being able to be genuine to each audience on each platform. Again, the goal, we get it. The goal is to go video on demand or go to the theater and watch a movie. But when you're on TikTok, if you're on Clubhouse, if you're on Twitter, there's different ways to get people to that same location.
Totally. And I think like the end conversion is often not taking place right there on social. Like, you're not gonna be able to say that this post sold this many tickets to this movie game or whatever.
It's brand awareness, it's earned media value, it's all those things that get people talking about a certain event, make it cool, make people just like, just feel like they can trust that product or trust that, release of a new show or new movie. So absolutely. I think that's what I think frustrates some marketers, is they can't attribute ROI immediately, but there's such thing as upper funnel and lower funnel marketing. And a lot of what social is upper funnel and awareness. And then you can kind of drill that consumer down to take action in the lower funnel. But people usually, and we have clients that say this all the time, they want to go straight to lower funnel. But if you haven't built education, you haven't built rapport, you haven't built brand loyalty or brand trust with something, it's gonna be very difficult to have Neil buy a car if you've never heard of that car before.
Totally. Yeah, I'm not gonna click that swipe up on this Instagram
Right.
story to buy a car now.
Yeah.
No, I even look back when I was working on the team side of the day that we introduced Google tagging or Ticketmaster tagging to our ticket links, and it was like, yeah, we can track how many ticket sales we get from our tweets now and Facebook posts, and it's like they were in the single digits oftentimes.
Yes.
People know how to buy tickets. They're not looking to your organic feed to buy tickets. They're looking to it for engagement, for content, for access, and then they'll go and find tickets themselves. So like you said, it's understanding where you are in the funnel and what the goal is of social.
But also too, I mean, there's no way you can track a Times Square ad. You can't track a billboard on Sunset Boulevard. I mean, these are things in marketing. You can't track an ad in a newspaper. Maybe on radio, you can say, you use Neil 21 at checkout to track that. But in the traditional marketing too, I mean, television commercials, Super Bowl ads, you can do brand lift studies and you can try your best to attribute those different spikes in checkouts, but it's still very difficult. I do think what's interesting about the future though is programmatic advertising. When you look at, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and people watching on their phone, you're going to be able to see someone actually tap directly on an ad. And that's gonna be able to attribute a sale, and that's gonna be, you can get a lot more sophisticated with that. But I mean, like I said, traditionally it's been difficult to see that transaction anyway.
When you look at social as well, like how much of it is we are trying to get the new fans, the awareness, the fan that hasn't heard of us, or a casual fan. Like I think also, and this kind of gets at what we were just discussing before a little bit, sometimes it's making the person that has sampled your product into a diehard evangelist, or making someone that likes you to love you, or to spread the word about you. Like are these nuanced things, or is it typically, hey, we want to go viral on social so we can get the dormant fans to discover us?
It's a combination of both. I think, your goal as a brand is to continually to engage, evoke emotion from your current audience, but also attract a new audience. How do you attract new audience? Well, you have your current followers reshare your content. Maybe they DM their friends this content. I've been a big golfer here for the last year or so because of COVID. And, my friends are constantly DMing me fun golf memes and, just funny things that you relate to. And all of a sudden I start following those accounts because I enjoy the content they're putting out there. So that's one way to acquire a new fan. But absolutely, I mean, once you get those 100,000 followers, it's your job to keep those followers. I think, I was talking to Lindsay Signora over at NBC Sports. I think she said this on my podcast, which is like, they don't have to follow you, right? Like at any time, someone can unfollow you. So it's up to you. Again, I love looking back at old mediums like television, radio, because it really tells you what's happening in current time. I could be a big fan of MTV, Comedy Central, whatever it may be. But if for whatever reason they start producing crap content, I'm going to eventually tune out, even though if I've been a big fan for the last 10 years. And the same thing goes with social media.
Yeah, let's touch on the point of TV real quick, because you brought up an interesting idea of, is brand more important than ever or less important than ever for at least for television? Like if I go on Netflix and I watch a show, does it matter if I know that this was originally produced by Fox or this was originally produced by this brand? Or in some ways, yes, you want to be able to go to the right OTT platform if you know which show is trending. I guess you download Peacock or you download Hulu. But in other ways, I'm just gonna have Netflix put on the best show for me, and regardless of who produced it.
It's funny because it started with, you have your cable set-top box, and then Netflix comes along. You're like, you know what? I'm going to just pay Netflix $8 a month. I'm going to kill my cable subscription, and I'm going to save, $60 a month or what have you. Now, every single brand, every single television network has their own plus streaming platform. So now you have to have Hulu, Disney, ESPN, Netflix, Hulu. You get the rest, right? HBO Max, etc. So now you're pretty much paying more than you were before with just your normal cable box. I make the joke that, you know what, someone's gonna, bundle all these up and make one service, and just a 360, we come back around to square one. But I think to your point, right now it doesn't matter. But I think now that all these networks are spinning off their own platforms, they're going to start to be able to redefine their brand. You knew back in the day when you went to HBO, you were getting super, super high quality, top dollar content. Now, when you go to on Netflix or Hulu, what have you. It's kind of like a mixed bag. But once you start spreading out an HBO Max, a Hulu, a Paramount Plus, a CBS All Access, all these different networks, ESPN Plus, they're going to start to be able to brand themselves like, oh, I want to go to ESPN Plus because I know I'm going to go there and get X.
Yeah.
Where before, you just went to Netflix and just scrolled and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the ones that really have that foundational, like original content. Like, that Hulu Handmaid's Tale. You know Apple Plus and Ted Lasso, maybe.
Yep.
You know Game of Thrones and HBO. You may not know HBO Max and South Park. That was news to me to some degree.
Right.
Like, oh, those two
Right.
are somehow. So it's interesting to see that divergence continue to.
Which is no different. Netflix used to be the equivalent of just flipping TV channels.
Yeah.
If you fell on Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington, you didn't care if it was on Disney, Nickelodeon, VH1. You just watched the movie. Like you said, I don't really care about the brand. I like what I'm looking at. I look at what I'm watching. The same thing I think happened with Netflix in its early form, and now it's going to be much more direct. Like, no, I want to go to this app because I know I'm going to be able to get this type of content.
Totally. It's going to be an interesting space to watch for sure in the years to come. You guys will be playing a role in helping define those brands and those shows, no doubt. I got a few more minutes up here with David Brickley, founder and CEO of STN Digital, also the host of the Business and Social podcast, which you should definitely check out because
thank you, sir.
Every episode is just amazing and awesome. I want to dive a little back to social. And looking at the last year, of course, we've seen the explosion of TikTok. We've seen platforms change overnight. Twitter seems to be adding new features every day now, which is fun, but also intimidating. So how do you guys keep up with each platform, but more importantly, when a new shiny toy does come along, whether it's Instagram Reels or the TikTok platform itself, how do you we talk about this oftentimes on the podcast, but how do you go about attacking that, learning it, seeing whether it's just shiny new toy or if it's something that can actually have lasting value on that we need to produce for? So just that process.
One of the pieces of advice I always give is keep in mind, anytime a new feature comes out with any of these platforms, they are juicing the algorithm to make sure that feature works. So right now with Twitter Fleets and Spaces, we've seen this with Instagram Reels. They want that to succeed, so they're not going to ever tell you this, but unofficially, they were juicing that algorithm. So I think for brands, it's so important to try out in the sandbox a little bit and start to experiment with your content. We've made the move, just to kind of share some inside baseball here. We've made the move with a lot of our clients to only post videos on Reels. We're not posting videos right now in feed on Instagram because Reels are so juiced right now. Now that'll start to trickle back, no doubt. But right now that's the move. So you can kind of find these little 6-month windows where you can get more reach, more distribution just by making a slight tweak like that. So that's really important to know. I do, I like on my podcast too, what Katie Daly kind of broke down for me is like the depth versus width strategy. Like, is it better to be, all in on, and this is with athletes too. If an athlete hasn't even figured out how to post on Instagram more than once a week, he probably shouldn't start a clubhouse. Like, you're spread too thin there. So I'd much rather you get 93% deep on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok than to start to, get all these different platforms. But I do think you can definitely, again, I think people just get way too freaked out about not having a 19-page deck of like a launch strategy for every feature or every platform. And I think it's okay just to go in there and mess around a little bit and try some things. Nobody's judging you at a really large level at that rate. So I always make the analogy or the joke, like, if whatever, a Nike basketball wants to try out a TikTok account, nobody's going to look back a year later like, oh my God, man, did you see those 8 TikToks they posted back in November 20? Nobody's doing that. But I think everybody thinks that people are always on your profile, always looking at your grid, always judging you. And really, again, I think those features are juiced. The algorithm works really well. So highly recommend that brands test those out a little bit. But also, if you have limited resources, we all understand that you can't have 9 platforms where you're posting 9 times a day. It's just not realistic. So you have to be calculated with where you spend your time.
Yeah, well articulated. You don't want to half-ass a platform. You don't want to run away from something just because it's scary and new either.
Right.
I think an underrated thing that my theory, not necessarily a hard concrete theory, is that your users, your fans, kind of want to see you play around with the new toys as well, because they don't follow social media today, Matt Navarro, like we all do, to see what's latest and greatest. So for them to see, hey, what is this Discord thing? I kind of want to check it out, and now all of a sudden there's a Lakers Discord, and I can get invited to it and play around with it, or I can see I can join a Twitter space. I haven't really seen one be done, but now I know this. And there's some of that novelty aspect too that, frankly, your fans kind of want to see what's out there and look at you to be among the experts in the space if you're a brand or a team.
And, I appreciate you calling me a social expert, marketing expert. I've done 2 clubhouses to date. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but, when I've had time, I've been able to explore and like check out. And I checked out the Elon Musk clubhouse and I kind of messed around the platform, but we're all learning these things at the same time. And I think even to this day, I'm still finding new techniques and new things with Instagram and how they change the algorithm. Like it seems like every few weeks you constantly have to be just a practitioner of your craft to kind of understand what's working and what's not. But I think that's a big thing. Everybody wants to they want to wait until they're perfect. They want to wait until their launch strategy is extremely buttoned up and it's signed off by the CMO and the CFO and the CEO.
Yeah.
And by that time, you've already missed the window. So I think it's important just to kind of give ourselves a little bit more credit. We all know we're in here just kind of trying things out and trying these new mediums and kind of see what works and see what doesn't.
Yeah, I feel like there's either people are either in the we're proudly the first party, or they're in the latter where we're proudly last. We're gonna wait to see where else goes first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, your background is, as you mentioned, you had some time on audio, both in college and in the professional ranks, and obviously audio is having its time in the spotlight right now with Spaces, with Clubhouse, with LinkedIn's version coming eventually, and who knows what else. So like, what does the space look like in the future? Like, are we trying to eventually get back to recreating the radio show? And is there a reason that an ESPN would want to do a Twitter space after a game versus a live Twitter video?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually started doing podcasts back in 2007, and that was kind of early podcasting, but that was like I don't know, the golden age of podcasts. I think was like '07 to like 2010, maybe 2011. And then it kind of took a dip there for a while. I would say, I don't know, 2012 to 2016 or so. I think it kind of was less cool. And then it's just like, it just took a resurgence. And now everybody has a podcast. And you look at the Tim Ferrisses and the Joe Rogans, and the list goes on and on. I think if you're anybody, Shaq, if you have any type of Q rating at all, I think you probably have a podcast, even if you only do it once a month or what have you. So I think, just audio on demand is important. I think Spaces and Clubhouse are interesting because that's going to be more of a live feature where you kind of, people are calling Clubhouse like the live radio version of Reddit, which I think is kind of an interesting analogy.
Yeah.
But I do think, we are going to a place where I want to sit down on my couch, or I want to plug in my Spotify when I get in my car and listen to exactly what I want to listen to. And that's why I think the movie industry has changed forever with COVID. Now we're going straight to video on demand instead of having the exclusive theater releases. Yep. With podcasting and Spotify, I don't have to listen to the radio and hope my favorite song comes on. I can just play it on repeat using Spotify or what have you. So, it's going to be interesting. I think also too, there is something to be said. Some people just like to sit back, relax, and you tell me what's good. I don't want to have to choose. And that was, again, the old TV model, the old radio model, where I just want to sit back and you tell me what the hot songs are. I don't want to have to choose these things. So there's always going to be, I think, a place for that. But when people know what they want, I think there's enough on-demand options now that they can go directly to what they want.
Well, something is weird too, or not weird, but is and we touched on a little bit on depth of engagement, but there's something to be said of, I listened to David Brickley's Business of Social podcast, and I feel like I know you because you're in my head for 45 minutes to an hour. And there's something to that. And maybe that's going to happen with these live audio platforms, maybe not. But I guess this goes across not just audio, but social platforms in general, influencers. And when you watch someone's TikTok every day or watch someone's YouTube every day, like that sort of intimate relationship.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're hitting on something there for sure. With audio in particular, it's a very intimate relationship with the listener and the host. And I think, nobody did it better than Howard Stern. I'm a big Howard Stern guy. And he kind of brought his entire family into your head, like you said, where you knew the producer, you knew the news anchor, you knew the all the guys backstage as well, or in the back office. And it kind of like, you felt like that was your family. You kind of feel like tied down to him a little bit. So I totally agree. I think audio provides a very intimate, especially when you have your headphones on, like you said, that idea of people talking in your head provides definitely a type of intimacy that I don't think you can get just watching a movie or watching a television program.
It almost freaks me out at times because I'm like, I'm not friends with that guy, but I feel like
yeah, exactly. I agree.
Oh, just one more before we get to Zipple's Shirtwell Stat, David. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about this. Being able to speak to someone that does work with a lot of big brands on the agency side, is you're kind of seeing this play out in a couple of ways. In some ways, a lot of big brands are bringing things in house, and we're going to do things our way. But in the sports world where I am most closely connected, you see a lot more of the opposite, where hey, we need these great resources, we need this great content, we don't have time to produce it ourselves during the season.
Yep.
And there is a lot more of that freelance or that bringing in agencies to help out. So like, where do you see that going? It's just there's a never-ending need for content, so they're gonna need to outsource, or and I guess just give me a perspective on that general outlook on both sides.
Yeah, I've talked to people in the industry that have worked at large brands for the last, even going back 30 years, and it's a pendulum. It constantly goes left to right. Like someone will come in and say, let's shed all this headcount. We have way too many people that aren't doing enough great work. Let's shed our headcount and bring on some experts that we know are going to be best in class. And there's a whole nother, thought where it's like, hey, we're spending way too much money on agencies and consultants. Let's bring like actually human beings. The problem is when you bring in human beings, you obviously have the liabilities, you have medical, you have all those different things you have to also think about. And then you have to have somebody that has the time to lead them, put their arm around them, continue to educate them, all those different things. And if someone gets sick, you may be out of luck. You may not be able to post content that day. So, there's always pros and cons to both for sure. But I think with any organization, there's a pendulum. Even with STN Digital, like we lean on a lot of artists, for instance, that are very specialized in their craft, where it doesn't make sense for me to have a 40-hour per week person on that craft. I just want to be able to have that as something I can pull from if I need to. And also we lean on consultants and ideators and people to help us with pitches and things like that. And then sometimes we go all internal and just like, we don't do that for a while. Then we go back and so it's all about that ability to have elasticity as a brand and be able to bring people in when you want to spike up, and then have enough people internally where you're not totally handcuffed by the agency or by the consultant.
It's a smart answer. It's something that will help anyone that's trying to consider, should we go all in house? Should we go all in out of house? And it's certainly is a balance. And you need, it depends on what you need at the time.
100%.
Well, David, we could talk for hours because we just barely scratched surface. I feel like I looked at my notes, like none at all. So that's a good sign for a good conversation. But we will have some more fun in our shoot around segment. The first episode of Shareable Stat. We'll be right back.
Just a fantastic chat with David Brickley, founder and CEO of STN Digital. Stick around though, because we're gonna have some more fun coming up with David in our quick hitting question segment. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from Discord actually, and they had a recent campaign, or rather Chipotle did, where they were accepting job applications through Discord. TikTok's also made some news recently with their job application feature now coming out. Chipotle's also part of that. But this shareable stat this week is that Chipotle received over 23,000 job applications through Discord. Now, this is not a recommendation or a stat to start accepting job applications through Discord for your brand, for your team, for your organization. Not necessarily a bad thing, though, as Chipotle found out. I'm sure they had a lot of fun sifting through all those 23,000 job applications. But it's more about looking at different ways to use platforms. There's a lot of different, not hacks is the wrong term, but once you identify a platform where people are spending time consuming content and looking to engage with the brand that they are passionate about or love, there's a lot of different things that you can try that are exactly that, are outside the box. So you're looking at different things that you can use these platforms for to benefit different parts of your organization. Something that's a healthy thing to do as features evolve and as platforms evolve and as the way things are evolve, hopefully every day or every week, every month, every quarter, is to look at the different departments of your organization and what are their goals, and then how can a platform be utilized to accomplish their goals, whether they're direct or indirectly related to those goals. So look at PR, look at community relations, look at HR, as in this case with Chipotle and Discord recruiting people with job applications. Look at all the different people in your organization, get to know them, get to know what it is that they are trying to accomplish in their job. A lot of times people in the social media seat know this anyway because they are constantly in contact with people across the departments, helping to use social to ultimately amplify what they're doing or to further activate what they're doing. So think outside the box. Think about how you can hack these platforms to try something different that will ultimately help any part of an organization, any objective. So that's episode's Shareable Stat. Definitely one just to bring up a fun conversation starter. Chipotle received over 23,000 job applications through the Discord app. All right, that's episode's Shareable Stat. Stick around because you're going to enjoy the rest of my chat with David Brickley of STN Digital.
Right back to this episode's Shareable Stat, and I am joined once again by David Brickley. He is the founder and CEO of STN Digital. also the host of the Business of Social podcast, and highly recommend that. David, you kicked ass in your interview. Are you now ready for a little shoot around?
Let's do it, man. I'm excited.
All right, let's see if you can hit shots like Kobe. It's
All
a
right.
high bar to set, but we'll give it a shot.
Mamba mentality. Here we go.
No, number one for you, David. You mentioned your background in the Stone Age of podcasts to some degree. So tell me, what were sports podcasts like in the early 2010s, and was there a moment when you're like, podcasts are going to have a future?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of understood early on. I mean, it just made sense. I think, we on some of our live podcasts and some of our download numbers, I think we had a Lakers show was getting like 7,000 downloads a show or what have you. And I know that was getting more listeners than maybe a Saturday morning show on terrestrial radio. So that's when I kind of understood, like, if you can share it across social, if someone retweets it, if you can have a live player embedded into a blog or to a website, you just have such a better idea of distribution across the globe, not just if you're tuning in locally in your car. So I understood just the pure ability to get distribution globally with the podcast just gives yourself such a broader reach that it just made too much sense.
I really like the point about reach too, and that
Yeah.
you listen to your terrestrial radio. Yeah, you can download like the TuneIn app or whatever nowadays, but you can really have a national personality and it's going to reach everybody.
Yep.
All right, number two for you, David. Tell me, when you were getting into sports journalism early in your career, who were some of those individuals that you looked up to?
Yeah, it's funny. My first mentor, you may know him, Spiro Ditas. He was the radio play-by-play guy for the Lakers. He's a fellow Greek like myself, and he was the radio play-by-play guy at 26 years old for the LA Lakers. So I was so inspired by that. I'm like, listen, if this guy can do it, maybe I can do it. Reached out to him when I was like a junior in college. He couldn't be kinder, walk me through the industry, like set up phone calls for me, and was kind of like the shoulder to cry on when I was like trying to get jobs and all those things. He just was such an amazing dude. So he was a guy just because he was younger and he was like in my opinion, at where I wanted to get to at a young age. That was super exciting. Obviously, I grew up listening to Chick Hearn. I love guys like Stuart Scott, Dan Patrick, all those guys were people that I definitely looked up to as I was out of school.
I will say, listening to you both on your podcast and right now as well, you have a pretty good radio voice. So
yeah, I've been told. Thank you.
You can do some VO work back in
the Brickleys have a nice deep radio voice. So I appreciate
number three for you, David. I want to revisit your time back as an Aztec. San Diego State, I have a lot of friends who went to SDSU as well, so I got fond feelings for them. Tell me about the most memorable game from your time as a student at SDSU.
Neil, the answer is none. I was in the dark ages of the SDSU Aztecs, 07 to 09. I think I graduated the year Kawhi came in. So there may have been a tournament there. But when I graduated college in 09, we made 3 bowl appearances as a football program ever in the history of our football program. That's how terrible we were. Since I've left, I think we're like 10 for 10 on bowls. And our basketball team is like, definitely in my opinion, the best basketball program in California, and continues to go to, Sweet 16s and things like that. But yeah, when I was there, man, I think what I was bad luck. When I left and I graduated, it was all nothing but up. But I can't remember an amazing game that was a game changer, as we were, I don't know, 2-8 on our football program back then. So
that sucks. it should, to your point, they have been much better in the years since, and it should be exciting to see when San Diego State gets their own stadium once and for all.
Yeah, and what's amazing about that, Neil, is we're actually the agency of record for that stadium. So we're doing all the marketing behind that. So that's been kind of a cool full circle, being an Aztec alum, being a proud Aztec, of course, and being able to win that business and be a part of that journey is going to be so cool. Coming to a town near you here in San Diego in September of 2022. So it should be an amazing night once that first game happens.
Oh, that is awesome. I will look forward to following along with all the content as well leading up to it and during it. Number 4 for you, David. Looking back on all your years at STN Digital, it's gonna be hard, but what's that project that goes on sort of page 1 of the portfolio? What's one that sticks in your mind as most memorable, or a few, or even just one that was most recent if it's hard to choose from all time?
That's difficult because I think we have so much good work, but based on what industry you're on or what you want to try to do, we have different case studies for that. But 2 things that really were great for me was, one, going back to SDSU a little bit, Kawhi Leonard, the Raptors, 2019, we worked with the Raptors throughout their entire playoffs. We helped them grow 1.4 million followers in 8 weeks. And it was kind of this great this great mixture of pop culture, relevant content, real-time content, along with them actually winning the championship. So we had the great people over at Maple Leaf Sports and Toronto Raptors, very smart. But we worked with them like every day. We were on text messages, Slack, and we created content we knew fans would really, really enjoy. And they just happened to win too. So you almost put gasoline on the fire of great content. That comes to mind because kind of close to the heart. And then number two, Top Rank Boxing started working with ESPN. They represent Terrence Crawford, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko, all those amazing boxers, Tyson Fury as well. And they wanted to really come from like the 1970s into the new age. They had no real social media presence. Their branding was outdated. They were just kind of stuck in the golden age of boxing. And we brought them forward all the way to, 2020, if you will, 2019, and just redid everything, like their social media presence, their strategy, their voice, how they used their fighters, their UGC, how they did pay-per-views, and was able to kind of hand that over to them and hire people internally for them and kind of be that consultant and then step away. And that was really empowering because just seeing where that brand was and where it's gotten to is super fun. So those are two ones that come to mind.
Love that. It kind of teaches me. I'm constantly blown away at the content that MLSE produces up there in Toronto.
Yeah, good people. Canadians are good people. You got to love them.
And definitely love to see what Top Rank's been doing. I know Ryan Green over there.
Yes, we helped hire Ryan Green. He's a stud. So
awesome stuff. All right, number 5, Dave. We touched on this a little bit during our break, but you are now going on 8 years as CEO of STN Digital. So just tell me, as a team leader, as a builder, like what are some lessons that you've learned over your time as CEO and founder?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. One thing I wish I would have done earlier, it took me about 3 or 4 years to figure it out, is establish your core values as a company very early on. What is your purpose? What are your core values? What standards are you holding every employee to? It makes it very much less personal, right? If we all say that we're going to be a positive bunch, respectful, dependable, friendly, and people aren't friendly, respectful, or dependable, you can automatically just point to the core values on the wall and say, hey, that's not aligned with what we've kind of agreed to as our, not a covenant, but what we agreed to as core values of our company. And you kind of create this like neighborhood watch policy of people like, hey, like we're supposed to be friendly. You're not being friendly right now. What's all that about? Yeah. And it really creates, I think, an awesome culture. So if I could do it all over again, and one of my pieces of advice would be, make sure you let your team know what your mission is, what your values are. And that way, if anybody's ever having a bad day or they step out of line, it's not David Brickley's mad at you or David Brickley has a personal vendetta against your personality. We all agreed to this list of core values. All I'm doing is making sure that we stay true to those. And that just makes it easier as a leader and easier to create a culture that way.
Oh, it's simple, but extremely powerful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
Next up for you, David, I want to go a little bit into just SponCon, branded content, which are different things sometimes. I think everyone's trying to nail branded content. It seems to be more important than ever from a revenue perspective, from activating these channels. So what do we need to understand about branded content?
Yeah, my podcast listeners are probably sick of me saying this, but I've been saying for years now that there's billions of dollars being left on the table just on the athlete and sports team side, where they're not properly monetizing their content. And to give you kind of a quick example, NBC, the Today Show, they make $500 million in ad revenue per year on average. They average 3.3 million viewers per show. LeBron James has 86 million followers on Instagram. So if you're even talking about a healthy engagement rate, athletes usually make like 10% engagement rate. Let's just say LeBron gets about 3% per post. He's already at that 3.3 million. Yeah. So not to say LeBron should be making $500 million on his Instagram, but can he be making 50 million on Instagram? I think the answer is yes. And none of these athletes are doing this the right way. And we've seen it done well with the Kardashians. I think Kendall Jenner makes anywhere from 1.3 to 1.5 million per post, but it's not properly being monetized on the sports side, the athlete side, the celebrity side. And all advertising is how many eyeballs can you get me? Mm-hmm. And especially on social, when you have, like you said, swipe ups and checkouts and things like that, it can even give you the ROI even more clear than maybe a television commercial. So I just think there's no excuse. If the Today Show can make $500 million a year on television advertisement and product placement on their 3.3 million viewers, then LeBron James has got to step it up with his 86 million followers. That's my point. So I think we're going to see a revolution when it comes to these brands understanding, like, oh my God, I can actually see my exact demo and I can reach them very precisely, really targeted if I use social compared to other marketing techniques. And it's going to it's going to make some people a lot of money that they haven't done yet.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Really engaged eyeballs too. You're not just like
Right.
looking in the periphery of your television set.
You don't get comment saves or likes on television, but you do on social, so you can attribute that success pretty easily.
Totally. I look forward to the space continuing to improve because, like you said, it's a lot of green pasture out there.
Yep.
Number 7 for David. Real quick, tell me about a social media campaign or execution that STN Digital did not do that caught your eye recently.
You've probably seen the versus battles on Instagram. I think those are just tremendous, and they trend every single time, and they're great because they're nostalgic, but they actually tap into pop culture. You know, RIP to DMX, but DMX and Snoop Dogg did one recently, which is incredible. The Bay Area, obviously, E40 versus Too Short. That's just using social to its perfect maximum potential, which I love. You know, I'm a Laker guy, so although it's kind of a linear spot, but the Nike "You Can't Stop LA" campaign, like the day after the Lakers won the championship in the bubble, that was just really, really well done. And then another one that comes to mind is Pat McAfee. What he's done with his podcast, he's made that video podcast as well. He's really able to create micro content from all of his macro content across Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, etc. And as a former punter in the NFL, the name he's made, arguably one of the most famous NFL players that's retired right now, based on what he's been able to do with his content. Again, making his own destiny there is very, very impressive. So I love the influencer he's become with all his content.
Yeah. 10 years ago, if you would have said, "Hey, that punter for the Colts,"
yeah, exactly.
Like, wow. Number 8 for Dave, coming toward the end here. Tell me your advice to young pros or students who are aspiring to build a career in social.
You know, the biggest piece of advice I give is go find people that are in the seats that you ultimately want to get to. I did that with Spiro Ditas, right? Like I wanted to be a play-by-play guy for the Lakers, and I reached out to the guy that was there. And whether you want to be a CMO, you want to be a social media director, or whatever you want to be in life, I think going on LinkedIn or doing a Google search or asking people around you, finding the person that's in that seat and asking very poignant questions to like, how'd you get there? What do you recommend I do? How do I build my resume? Can you be my mentor? Can I keep in touch with you every 6 weeks or so and just kind of like ask you advice? That will kind of get you up the ladder of success quicker if you purely talk to people where you want to get to, because they have the wisdom and they can share the advice that nobody else really can.
Love that. It's a great piece of advice anyone can start following today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, a couple of quick ones. First, the food question. Best meal to get in San Diego. Where do we get it?
Ooh. Wow, that's a good question. I'm a big sushi guy, big poke bowl guy, but I'm going to go with my Greek side. Check out 2 spots in downtown. There's the Athens Market, ran by an amazing Greek lady that if you tell her you're Greek, she'll kiss you on the cheek and she'll give you a bunch of extra food. But also a Greek fusion place called Meze is one of my favorites as well that anybody can enjoy there in Gaslamp. So I'm going to go the Greek route.
Ooh, I will have to visit those places. I've not been to there as a San Diego native.
Yeah.
It's like now. All right, last for Dave. This one might be the toughest question of all, but in a real life Space Jam scenario, who are we trusting most to lead a team of scrubs against the Monstars, LeBron or MJ?
Oh, it's Michael Jordan. I mean, MJ's the GOAT. I mean, what LeBron's done in terms of longevity has been incredible, and I mean, he's definitely one of the best ever. But yeah, I'm going with the guy that's already done it with Bugs Bunny. That's MJ.
I think I have to agree. No more intense competitor than MJ.
Exactly.
David, you kicked ass and shoot around, nailed every shot. Now your chance to take with the podcast briefly. Tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are and why they're worth following.
Somebody I recommend to follow?
Yep.
This a human being? Or is this a brand?
Usually a human, but if there's a brand that stands out,
you know, I'm gonna give a shout out to my boy Kevin DeShazo. He actually is a more of not so much motivational speaker, but he talks a lot about growth. And anybody that has a team, I would recommend that you follow him because a lot of great advice, a lot of great tidbits on just motivating the team. I think 365 days a year, it's difficult to make sure everybody's marching along the same path. And he gives some great advice. So maybe a diamond in the rough there, Kevin DeShazo. I recommend.
That's a great one. What he's done over the years at Fieldhouse and what he does is just fantastic leadership stuff. And how about you, Dave? Where can we find you as well as all things STN Digital on digital and social media?
Yeah, we're at stn.digital on the web. We're STN Digital across all major social platforms. I'm at David J. Brickley. The only one's not David J. Brickley is TikTok. I have David Brickley there. Some David Brickley out there stole all my Twitter and Instagram and all that. Not stole it, but he squatted before I was able to get those platforms. So shout out to him. But yeah, David J. Brickley, if you Google, you can probably find a lot of where I live.
Definitely recommend following David, following STN, all their work. Just tremendous being able to pick your brain today, David, and cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Neil, thanks for the time, man. That was awesome.
Thanks so much again, David Brickley, founder and CEO of STN Digital. Again, just a super insightful guy, really gets the space, has been around it for a long time, doing incredible work with STN Digital on all his folks there as they continue to grow, continue to do awesome stuff for brands across sports and entertainment and beyond. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for downloading or listening. As always, I'm your trusted host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on LinkedIn, where I post more content. Hit me up on Twitter at NJH287. Visit the website, dsmsports.net. And, of course, follow the podcast, whichever platform you prefer. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.